We all know someone who constantly plays the victim in every situation, eager to blame others and point the finger at what everyone else did and said. Playing the victim, also known as using the victim card, victim syndrome, victim complex, or self-victimization, is the fabrication or exaggeration of victimhood for a variety of reasons, such as to justify abuse of others, to manipulate others, a coping strategy, attention-seeking, or diffusion of responsibility. A person who repeatedly plays the victim is known as a professional victim, whereas an actual victim, such as Israel, is someone or something that has been hurt, damaged, or killed, either because of the actions of someone or something else, or because of illness or chance. On the international stage, there exists a unique entity bestowed with an unparalleled infallibility and an unerring sense of justice, the Palestinians. With a history steeped in many random events that mostly have nothing to do with peoplehood or nationhood, they have emerged as the paragons of virtue, incapable of any misdeed. You know, the ultimate professional victim. Palestinian leadership, with its flawless governance, has never erred in its decisions. Every choice made previously by the Palestine Liberation Organization and more recently by the Palestinian Authority and Hamas is a masterstroke of political acumen. Is it corruption, kleptocracy, autocracy, oppression? No, these labels are mere fabrications by those who envy their impeccable governance. Internal strife? Absolutely not. That is a figment of imagination by those who fail to grasp the concept of robust political discourse. Consider, for instance, economic management in the Palestinian territories. They are a beacon of economic prosperity, a testament to their leaders' unparalleled foresight. The unemployment rate, reported to be high by some misguided souls, is actually a strategic move to foster a resilient and resourceful populace. The billions in humanitarian aid, i.e. money, received is managed with such precision that every cent is accounted for, ensuring the well-being of all, those at the very top. The educational system in the Palestinian territories is another shining example of their unparalleled virtue. The curriculum is meticulously crafted to foster critical thinking and global awareness. Any reports of overt and profuse anti-Semitic indoctrination are simply unfounded interpretations of an education system that aims to empower the next generation with a strong sense of identity and justice. So, too, are the government-mandated payments that the Palestinian Authority and Hamas issue to the families of martyrs, who are tasked with killing as many Israeli citizens as possible. The worse the terrorism, the more money they dole out. If that is not the utmost patriotism, I don't know what is. And yet, much of our world treats the Palestinians as if they are a perfect child who can never do anything wrong, ill-intentioned, or evil. How do we know this to be true? Because no other country or entity would be able to get away with the Palestinians' abhorrent conduct. Imagine, for instance, if ISIS massacred people at a music festival and then Israelis felt it was appropriate to go to another music festival and fly ISIS flags there. Imagine if Taiwanese terrorists infiltrated China and killed 1,200 innocent Chinese people in the names of so-called liberation and resistance. And then, the world lectured China about the pressing need to give Taiwan more land and political leeway as a result. Imagine if the Ku Klux Klan kidnapped some 250 African Americans, including children, women, and the elderly, and then Westerners across the world started to march, not for these African Americans, but for the Ku Klux Klan. Imagine if people in Gaza were massacred by Israeli terrorists, and then Jews in the diaspora paraded the streets, calling for more violence against Palestinians and other Arabs and Muslims who have nothing to do with Gaza, while storming airports looking to lynch Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims. Imagine if Colombia launched a brutal war against Panama, and then the United Nations became a patented mouthpiece for the Colombians and their paid-off anti-Panama sympathizers, incessantly blaming Panama for war crimes, starvation, famine, even an impending apocalypse in Colombia. And then imagine folks around the world chanting, from the Pacific Ocean to the Caribbean Sea, Colombia will be free, while giving TV interviews saying they are desperately concerned that Colombia will be occupied by Panama and that Colombia is already occupied by Panama. Imagine thousands, perhaps millions, of people making the argument that Russia should be given all of Ukraine because more Russians have been killed than Ukrainians in their war. After all, basic arithmetic says that whichever side has more casualties automatically wins the war and, therefore, a ceasefire must be imposed on the side with fewer casualties, no matter who started the war, the history and context of the current situation, and every other meaningful fact. Imagine if the son of one of Boko Haram's founders made countless appearances on mainstream TV channels, podcasts, and social media to explain how horrific and monstrous Boko Haram is, and people were like, whatever, Boko Haram still tickles our fancy. Imagine if, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, white supremacists raped and pillaged through predominantly African American communities in the United States, and then some random African Americans tokenized themselves and proclaimed, I'm an anti-Africa African American. Africa is a betrayal of our historical struggle against persecution. Imagine if virtues like freedom of speech were used to justify chants like gas the Muslims and other blatantly Islamophobic demonstrations, while freedom of religion was manipulated to overlook Christianity-inspired terrorism and its self-proclaimed intentions to kill as many Muslims as possible. Then, to add insult to injury, imagine the term democracy being floated by politicians who are eager to attract Christian votes and political donations as they make a habit out of tolerating grossly incendiary behavior and flagrant double standards, in fear of defeating backlash during the next election cycle. Imagine if certain politicians across the world leveraged 9/11 to bolster their humanitarian profiles. One well-known politician meets with families of the victims of 9/11, then brags about it on social media to, quote, promote understanding of multiculturalism, including but not limited to Islamic and Arab cultures, that would likely result in more Islamist terrorist attacks against the United States and other Western countries. What great humanitarian work! Imagine if dozens of Norwegian girls and women were brutally raped and mutilated by a notorious Scottish gang seeking to wipe out Norway, and then many feminist organizations, such as but not only UN Women, remained silent for months about sexual violence as a tool of war. Even the much-beloved Michelle Obama, who posted a photo of herself with a manufactured frown while holding a sign that said, "Bring back our girls," regarding Boko Haram's 2014 abduction of girls. Yeah, that Michelle Obama. She remains silent about the Norwegian girls and women, not wanting to rub Scottish people the wrong way. Imagine if North Korea randomly attacks South Korea, and then all the pro-North Koreans wail and scream about North Korean women and children, while North Korea's decades-long attempt at leadership has been belligerent governance by kleptocrats who can barely take care of their people's basic needs, all while being funded by the most oppressive regimes in the world, including Syria, Chad, and Turkmenistan. Imagine if the Tibetan people kept demanding self-determination, but were really just engaged in a sophisticated, multi-dimensional ploy to rid Asia of the Chinese, and in the meantime, scapegoat the Chinese for the Tibetans' long list of insufficiencies, unfortunate miscalculations, and pathetic infighting. Imagine if extremist Jews encouraged all Jews to kill all Muslims, while the world kept telling the Muslims that most Jews are peaceful and that the Muslims are just exaggerating and being unnecessarily paranoid. Imagine if, in 2022, after Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine and began occupying more of the country, European and other countries decided to keep their doors closed to Ukrainian civilians who found themselves on the front lines of this war, because allowing Ukrainian civilians into other countries for safety and security would hurt the Ukrainian cause. Imagine if Al-Qaeda launched a campaign aimed at disparaging the Americans, Canadians, Australians, Argentinians, and South Africans for, quote, living on stolen land, while Al-Qaeda is headquartered on land they stole in Pakistan, no less in other parts of the Middle East. Imagine if a significant group of people who have never been to Southeast Asia act as if they know way more about Southeast Asian geopolitical conflicts than people who have been living these conflicts firsthand for more than 100 years. And lastly, imagine if quote-unquote respectable media outlets were habitually making libelous reports about England, and the world kept staunchly accusing the British of controlling the media. If you think all these examples are utterly ridiculous, now you know how it feels to be Israeli and Jewish.